Welcome back with a smiley face. A link of previous episodes is provided into the description of the video. You can also join us on Patreon to listen more unlimited audiobooks like this. You can also visit and shop our ebooks. Luna's Journey with Snow Moon Pack. Episode 1. Synopsis. Lily was 5 years old when she entered the Snow Moon Pack. She has no memory of her previous life, or which pack she came from. Found in the middle of the night raiding the pack house kitchen for food, she was taken in by the reigning Alpha and Luna. However, she is far from being treated as a pack member. Her whole life she was subjected to punishment and abuse, made to work as a slave for the pack. Her wolf, Aya, is her only friend. Dimitri Carlos is the alpha of the Blood Moon Pack. He is known for being heartless, cruel, merciless, a bloodthirsty killer. Years of not being able to find his fated mate have led him to believe the moon goddess, mother of wolves, does not intend to gift him with one. Until the night he meets Lily, and his world will change forever. She is rebellious, headstrong. She tests his patience like no other before. Will Lily accept the supposed cruelest alpha alive to be her mate? Will Dimitri prove he can be what she deserves? Or will jealousy, rivals, and lies tear them apart? Book 2. Midnight Wolf Violet and Garrett, twins to Alpha Dimitri and Luna Lily, are finally coming of age. But nobody expects what happens when they shift for the first time. A new type of wolf emerges, causing a rift in the twins' relationship. What's more, Garrett is bent on stopping his sister and her mate from being together. But a danger bigger than their problems is just over the horizon, waiting. Violet and Garrett will have to find a way to put aside their differences, and work together to save Blood Moon. After all, family is what matters most, and the bond between the two will open up a world full of possibilities. Lily POV. Hurry up, slave. Goddess, you have nothing to work with anyway. Did you even bathe? I rolled my eyes for what felt like the millionth time. Why Luna decided her spoiled, stuck-up daughter, who also hated my guts, would be the perfect person to help me get ready for my wedding was beyond me. Although helping was far-reached. So far, she had pulled me out of bed by my hair, handled me into my creaky chair in front of my sorry excuse for a vanity, and screamed at me to get ready. Since then, she had done nothing but around on her phone and occasionally insult me. Yes, Evelyn. I clipped out. She snorted in response and went back to her phone. I was nearly ready. My thick red hair was pulled up into a French twist, my veil tucked into it nicely. I had no makeup to speak of, so I had no choice but to go natural. It didn't bother me much, my skin was flawless in terms of acne. I would have liked something to try and conceal how sallow my cheeks were and the bags under my eyes though. I was extremely pale, due to a lack of food and nutrition, which made me look sickly. My full lips were dry and peeling slightly. I hadn't had a drink in over 24 hours, and how I wish I could say it was from nerves. Sadly, it wasn't. I had a straight, proud nose, so I guess that was a plus. The only feature I really loved was my eyes. They were unbelievably green, like emeralds, but more. They almost shone with the depth of their color. My gaze swept down to my dress. It was gorgeous. The only thing I had ever received from the Alpha in the 13 years I'd been at this pack. Alpha Theo and his Luna, Tina of the Snow Moon Pack, had adopted me when I was 5 years old. I have no recollection of my life or family from before. Many times I had tried to remember, but it was black, fuzzy. Eventually, I'd stopped trying. My first memory was 13 years ago, entering Snow Moon's borders and staggering around until I came across the pack house. Foolishly, I'd raided the kitchen as I had been starving, and the Luna had caught me red-handed. Terrified and alone, she had taken me in. Though I quickly found out she was not a Luna of mercy, as I was made to clean, cook and serve the pack with harsh punishments if I strayed or argued or talked back. Her daughter, Evelyn, was the same age as me, and just as cruel as her parents. Her main source of enjoyment was to torment me. Once, when we were 10, I had spilled a glass of orange juice on the floor. Evelyn had walked right up to me and dumped the remaining glass over her head, immediately screaming for her parents, claiming I had thrown a glass at her and then dumped the juice on her when I missed. None of her friends had backed me up, and I'd spent 3 days in a cell in the basement with no food or water and merciless beatings from the Alpha and Luna both. I had no idea how I survived, and at the time, I wasn't overly happy that I did. Over the years, however, I'd simply learned to stay away from everyone as much as possible. When that wasn't possible, I just kept my eyes down and my mouth shut. The punishments happened less and less, but when they did happen, they were extreme. If Evelyn had a bad day at school, she would take it out on me. Sometimes her friends would join in, leaving me in whatever state when they were done. More often than not, I'd wished for death. Until I got my wolf, Aya. It was thanks to her that I found my voice again, my will to fight back somewhat. She was strong, snarky, and my only friend. She was the only reason I'd managed to keep my sanity. I smiled to myself, remembering the night she finally came forward. I was in the last room of the main floor, just finishing up mopping. Suddenly a voice had me screaming and dropping the mop, splashing water everywhere. "Hey! Who's there?" I asked nervously. I spun in a slow circle, looking for a sign of another person. Laughter. "No need to be so jumpy. I won't hurt you, Lily." I realized the voice was in my head. "You're my wolf." "Bingo. Is that your name?" "Bingo." I asked. "Odd." "What?" "No, silly girl. My name is Aya, and it is so nice to finally be here with you. It's really nice to meet you too." I thought. I figured. I trailed off helplessly. "That you didn't have a wolf?" "I know. You do." She sighed. "I've always been here, Lily. I know those AS told you that you couldn't possibly have a wolf and all the other they've put you through. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't here to help you. But I'm here now, and you'll always have me to watch your back. FK this pack, and FK them for they've put you through." I laughed, full of joy. I had a wolf. This was the best day of my life. "Oh, Lily." "Yes, Aya." I answered. "Happy birthday." I grinned so much, that I didn't even mind I had to remop the floor. That was last month, my 18th birthday. I hadn't shifted yet, as wolves shift for the first time on the full moon after their 18th birthday. I couldn't wait to see what Aya looked like. My reminiscing was interrupted by Evelyn's high-pitched voice. "What are you smiling about?" Aya snarled in my head. I shook my head but declined to answer. Evelyn narrowed her eyes at me and stood up, moving towards me. She stood behind me with her hands on her hips. "You know, slave, I think you could use a little color in your cheeks." She smiled wickedly. I immediately sprang up and tried to dash to the door, but she was quick. Grabbing my arm, she spun me around and landed a vicious blow to my left cheek. While I was still stunned, she repeated the action to my right cheek. Tears sprang to my eyes to accompany the stinging on my face. I roared in my head, momentarily deafening me while Evelyn laughed. I didn't even hear the insult she threw at me. Holding my cheeks, I turned swiftly for the door, exiting the room with Evelyn hot on my heels. "You'll be back, you know," she said. "I know you think this marriage is your ticket out of here, but it's not. As soon as your groom realizes who my parents are marrying him off to, he'll throw you out faster than you can blink. I'll be surprised if he even goes through with the ceremony," she hissed. Stepping in front of me, she grabbed my throat roughly. "You will always be nothing but a slave." Evelyn released me, shoving me back a few feet. Without another glance, she marched down the hall and out of sight around the corner. I leaned against the wall, taking deep breaths. "She's wrong. Don't listen to her, Lily." My wolf tried to soothe me. "She's right, though. I've always been a slave. Who could possibly want me? Look at me. I am. You're stronger than you realize. You've been through so much, and you're still here. Still standing. Even if this guy throws you out, we won't come back here." I blinked. "You'd go rogue. I told you I'd always be here with you. Even if we had to be a rogue." Tears welled up again, but this time from happiness. "Wow. Thank you. I love you, Aya. I love you too, Lily. Now, let's go get married." She cheered with mock enthusiasm. I laughed quietly. Straightening my dress and my hair, I began walking down the hallway. With each step, nerves began to pool in my stomach. See, the craziest thing about my situation was that I actually didn't know who I was marrying. This whole thing was arranged without my knowledge, at least, up until last week. I'd been a server at the yearly Alphas meeting, which was at Snow Moon this year. The next day, Alpha Theo and Lunatina dragged me into the Alpha's office and told me I was getting married. They never said to whom, and they never gave me the option to say no. All they said was they were getting more for my hand in marriage than I was worth, and they were glad to be finally getting rid of me. I couldn't say I was unhappy about the prospect of leaving this pack, but I was scared of marrying an unknown man. I couldn't fathom why anyone would want me, to be honest. I assumed it was someone from an ally pack who wanted a slave. The more I'd thought about this, the more I believed it true. After all, Alpha Theo could pick any random girl to replace me. Lost in my fears, I finally reached the grand double doors to the hall where the ceremony was taking place. Voices buzzed from inside. I felt like vomiting, but also something else. My head began to swim, and I was suddenly too hot. My heart rate was picking up quickly, and I felt lightheaded. Was I about to pass out minutes before my wedding? Lily POV. As I took deep breaths as being coached by my wolf, Alpha Theo snuck up beside me. I had been so focused on my breathing I hadn't even heard him. He grabbed my arm roughly, pulling me to his side. I flinched. "Stop fidgeting," he hissed. "What are you doing?" I asked. I felt so out of sorts, I didn't even stop to consider my words or the disrespectful tone in which I said them. Alpha Theo narrowed his eyes at me. The hand at his side twitched like he wanted to strike me. "Since you have no father here, it is my duty to walk you down the aisle and give you away. Don't misinterpret this though, I take absolutely no pleasure in touching you." What? Why did it sound like he was insinuating something? "You mean, you take no pleasure in touching me when it's not violent?" I deadpanned. Aya, who had been pacing in my head, stopped in her tracks. I could feel the shock coming from her. I was shocked too. I'd never spoken to the Alpha like that before, with such confidence. Where had that come from? The Alpha seemed more shocked than either of us, however. His face was comical. At least it was until his eyes turned black and a low growl came through his teeth. Before Alpha Theo could hit me, or worse, kill me on the spot, the doors in front of us began to open. He released his hold on my arm instantly and I winced as the blood flow began again. He linked his arm with mine instead, turning me towards the hall. I had no maid of honor, no bridesmaids. Not that anyone would have agreed if I had asked. As we entered the hall, I was hit in the face with the most amazing scent. It was a mix of lavender and chocolate, with a hint of an almost musky, woodsy smell. It almost knocked me off my feet. It filled the hall and I found myself looking around, searching for the source. I was practically jumping in my head, wanting to come out. "Mate! Mate!" she screamed. "What? Where?" I asked. I saw him then. My eyes zeroed in on the most amazingly breathtaking man I'd ever witnessed. He was taller than Alpha Theo, at least 6'7", a giant, and all muscle. His tuxedo strained against his muscles in a way that had my mouth watering. I could see the hint of a tattoo peeking out front under the shirt collar on his neck. I was less than 5 feet away now, close enough to see his hair had a slight wave to it, and it was pitch black. My fingers itched to run through it. He had a chiseled jaw, with a 5 o'clock shadow. Full lips under a straight, long nose, and his eyes. They gazed into mine and held me captive. They were a warm honey gold with flecks of brown. I had forgotten where I was, the reason, the time, the place. "This is our mate?" I asked Aya. I couldn't quite believe someone so, he was my mate. Yes. I could feel her connecting with our mate's wolf. She was purring with joy and happiness. A loud throat clearing sounded next to me, and I unwillingly cast my gaze away from my mate in annoyance. Alpha Theo was glaring at me, his arm still linked with mine. It was only then that I'd realized we'd come to a stop. The entire hall was buzzing with hushed whispers, everyone staring at me. I blushed slightly and looked down. "Alpha Theology." His voice was deep, husky. It sent a shiver down my spine. "I'll take her from here." My head shot up. Wait. I was marrying him? My mate? Who did you think? He's the only one up here other than the old guy. Snaked Aya. Truthfully, I hadn't even noticed anyone else, but she was right. Only the elder who was blessing the marriage stood at the altar with my mate. I glanced around him. Didn't he have groomsmen? Friends? Family? What are you waiting for? Go! Hissed Alpha Theo. He released my arm with a not too subtle shove. A growl erupted from my mate's chest at the action, and I peeked up in time to see Alpha Theo's face go pale. He bowed his head in apology and went to take his seat next to his Luna. I spotted Evelyn seated next to her mother, but I didn't understand her expression. Truthfully, the second I realized whom I was marrying, I could only imagine how jealous Evelyn would be. I mean, this man was a god. But she looked smug. She had a wicked little smile on her face, laughter in her eyes. Her expression had anxiety pooling in my stomach. Ahem. I jerked my attention back to the man in front of me. He was glaring at me now, annoyance clear on his face. "I'd like to get started, if you're willing to pay attention now," he grumbled. Without waiting for an answer, he signaled to the elder to begin the ceremony. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to be here at Snow Moon today to bless the union of these two children of the Moon Goddess. Shall we?" He looked my mate. He nodded once. The elder looked to me with a soft smile, which I returned. "Do you, Lily?" He stumbled for a second and I blushed a deep red. Traditionally, he would use my full name, but since I had no memory of my past, I didn't know my last name. Or even if I had a middle name. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my mate raise his eyebrows in confusion. The elder cleared his throat and started again. Do you, Lily of the Snow Moon Pack, accept this marriage and my blessing of it? I do. I replied quietly. And do you acknowledge and accept that henceforth, you will no longer be a member of the Snow Moon Pack? Yes. I replied a little more eagerly. Then as an elder of the Werewolf Sitting Council, I hereby strip you of any ties to the Snow Moon Pack. Alpha Theo? The elder gestured to my alpha who stood up. I accept. He said. I felt a tearing through my chest and I gasped. Everyone in the hall save the elder and my groom gasped and clutched their chests along with me. Losing a pack member was painful for everyone, but I took the pain with a smile, knowing I was officially no longer a member of this horrid pack. I felt an intense wave of freedom not to be tied to them anymore. When everyone was quiet again, the elder turned to my mate. Do you, Alpha Dimitri Carlos, accept Lily, former member of the Snow Moon Pack, as your wife and mate, and therefore Luna of the Blood Moon Pack? My breathing hitched to a stop. Alpha? Carlos? As in, the cold-blooded killer Alpha Carlos? I asked Aya. I guess so. But his wolf? I don't care about his wolf, Aya. I can't accept this. He's a murderer. I was shaking as the reality of my situation started to sink in. They were marrying me off to the cruelest, most viscous alpha on this side of the world. And to make matters worse, he was my mate. What kind of sick sense of humor did the moon goddess have? I hadn't suffered enough, she thought she'd toss me to the merciless alpha? I do. I felt the mate bond intensify. I ground my teeth together, and kept my eyes downcast, avoiding eye contact with Alpha Carlos. Lily, former member of the Snow Moon Pack, do you accept Alpha Dimitri Carlos of the Blood Moon Pack to be your husband and your mate, thereby accepting your title as his Luna? I didn't. I didn't want to go with him. These were my options then. Stay here and be a slave and get beat, go with the murdering alpha who, or go rogue and have nobody. Tears welled in my eyes at my situation. Please don't reject him. Aya whimpered. Aya, we can't accept him. I know. She cut me off. But you need to remember that you wouldn't be the only one losing a mate. She snapped. Closing my eyes, I sighed quietly. When I opened them, I looked into my alpha's eyes. He was staring at me with such anger, I actually took a step back. Please, whispered Aya. Lily. The elder stepped forward. I heard a snicker I'd know anywhere behind me. Now I know why Evelyn was so smug earlier. Taking a deep breath, I looked away from Alpha Carlos and down at my shoes. I do. I whispered. The mate bond intensified again with my words. I blinked away unshed tears as I sealed my fate. The elder stepped back, giving me a short look of something close to sympathy. It is my great joy to pronounce you man and wife. You may kiss, that won't be necessary. Alpha Carlos cut across him. He turned to me. Come. Dragging my feet, I turned to follow my new husband. Lily POV Alpha Dimitri Carlos strode down the platform, stopping briefly to shake my former alpha's hand. They exchanged no words, but it felt disrespectful to me, like a good doing business with you vibe. I wondered for the first time how much he had offered for me. It couldn't have been very much as I was nothing but a lowly slave for the pack. More than likely, they were probably just glad to be rid of me. Keeping my eyes down and my feet shuffling forward, I felt bad for whoever they replaced me with in the future. A deep sigh interrupted my thoughts, and I glanced up to see my mate's annoyed face. "Can you move any faster? I'd like to get home sometime today if that's okay with you," he snapped. "Sorry," I mumbled. He rolled his eyes. "Your things are packed and already loaded in the car. Let's go." He reached for my arm, and I instinctively flinched back. It wasn't entirely his fault. I'd been beaten since the age of 5, fast movements tended to cause me to react like that. Whether he knew of how I was treated here or not though, he stopped reaching for me and dropped his hand to his side. "Can me? Should I change first?" I asked him. "Why?" I blinked at him. "Am I supposed to show up to your pack in a wedding dress? Why does it matter?" It didn't really. I was stalling, not wanting to be in a close, personal space like a car with him. "Look, I've come and got what I needed here. Now I'm going home. If you're not in the car in 2 minutes, you can walk to Blood Moon." With that, he turned and walked away from me. Wow! He's a real charmer. I know he's a bit rough around the edges. But his wolf is really nice. That's supposed to make me feel better? Yes. My turn to roll my eyes. Dutifully, I followed my husband out of the pack house to a waiting black SUV. He was already seated in the driver's seat, tapping his fingers impatiently on the steering wheel. I climbed in somewhat awkwardly thanks to the skirt of my dress and shut my door. Glancing in the back seat, I saw a single suitcase. That would be my thing, as sad as that was. Clicking my seatbelt into place, I stared out the windshield. We weren't moving. 2 minutes passed. Then 3. And 5 minutes later, we still were parked in the drive of the pack house. I broke the silence. "Aren't we leaving?" I asked him. "Yes. As soon we get the rest of your stuff." I looked at him quizzically. "What?" He jabbed a thumb over his shoulder, indicating my suitcase. I actually laughed. "That is the rest of my stuff." Now it was his turn to look confused. "That is all you have?" "Yeah." "Where are the rest of your clothes?" "They're in there." "I don't have much." I shrugged. "Much? You don't have anything?" he barked. I shrugged again. He continued to look at me with an undecipherable expression before his expression hardened again. "Whatever," he grumbled. Finally, he started the car and put it in the drive. Leaning back in my seat, I started out at the houses passing us by, giving way to more and more trees until we left Snow Moon behind completely. Turning onto the highway, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I can't believe it. I know. We're actually out of Snow Moon. We don't ever have to go back, Lily. We're free. I whooped in my head. Free. Somehow this didn't feel like freedom. I'd gone from being a slave to a Luna in less than a day to a man who might actually kill me as he'd done so many others. Even as a slave, I'd heard all the stories of Alpha Dimitri Carlos. He was feared near and far for his ability to kill. He'd wiped out entire packs. He had no mercy, no heart. He was actually known as the Heartless Alpha. And here I was, sitting in a car with him, accompanying him to his pack as his Luna and wife. It felt surreal. Should I speak to him, try to make conversation? I floundered around in my head, searching for something to ask him that didn't involve his kill streak or how many people he had decapitated. Hours passed. It was dark outside now, the trees a dark blur as we sped past. Suddenly, it popped into my head, and out of my mouth before I could stop it. "Why didn't you kiss me?" I blurted out. Alpha Carlos glanced at me and then back to the road. Silence. "Alpha." I tried again. Nothing. I'd been so caught up in the shock before, I hadn't even minded that he didn't kiss me. But now, as my reality began to really set in, it seemed important to know why. Was I that repulsive? Why did this matter so much to me anyway? He was a cold-blooded murderer, I shouldn't even be thinking about kissing him. Stupid mate bond. However, it seemed my mouth was not connected to my brain as I whispered, "I'm your mate." "Enough!" he snapped loudly. I flinched away from him, hurt. Stupid mate bond. I didn't speak a single word for the rest of the trip. My gaze traveled between the window and my shoes, I refused to look at him. An hour ago, he'd told me we'd crossed into his land, I'd simply nodded. Was I being disrespectful? Probably. But he wasn't chatting me up either way, so I didn't care. "We're here." He pulled up to a huge 10-foot gate that looked to be made of iron. 2 guards were stationed on our side, and 2 more just beyond. All 4 men were huge, but nowhere close to their alpha. The closest guard gave a signal and the gates swung open. Despite my qualms about this situation, I was impressed as we drove further towards the pack house. Most of the area was covered in trees, but I could spot houses in the dense forestry. Here and there, quaint cottages were dotted around with cute balconies and porch swings, gardens, stone walk paths. I even spotted a few garden gnomes. Not at all what I had been imagining when I learned who my husband-to-be was. 15 minutes later, Alpha Carlos pulled up to what could only be the pack house. The driveway was a big semicircle of stone bricks, with a water fountain stationed in the middle. Cars were parked in a line along the edge, jeeps and SUVs. Taking a minute to admire the house itself, I was honestly awestruck. The pack house was ginormous, at least 5 stories tall and just as wide. Lush flower beds lined the front, giving way to a beautifully green front lawn. Vines crawled up between the windows, sprouting little buds. Morning glories, I thought. Lights were on in various windows of the house, casting a yellow glow. It felt homey. "Are you going to sit there and stare all night?" "I'm tired," grumbled my mate. I shook my head, speedily opening my door and stepping out. I hadn't moved much over the course of the long car ride, and my legs were super stiff. I took a second to stretch them while still admiring the house. Upon closer inspection, I noticed the whole place was constructed of deep redwood. I bet it looked even better in the daylight. "Lily." It took me a minute for him to catch my attention. Nobody used my name, I'd always been called slave or mutt, or other various derogatory terms. "Yes, I'm coming. Just let me get my stud, don't bother. But I'll get you some new clothes tomorrow. You can throw that suitcase out, and everything in it." He began to walk to the house, but stopped when I opened the back door of the SUV. He sighed loudly, clearly irritated. Opening the suitcase, I dug through the clothes that had been packed. Really, they were just rags until I found my objective. Closing the door, I clutched my necklace and joined him. "What's that?" he asked. "It's a necklace." He raised an eyebrow. Well, it's the only thing I have that's really mine. I don't remember who gave it to me, but I had it before I came to Snow Moon, so. Why was I explaining this? Okay. He turned on his heel and I followed him, mentally rolling my eyes. He really was an ass. He didn't hold the door for me, which I expected. Glancing around as I followed him through the door, I was again awestruck by how big this place was. Paintings decorated the walls that I'd have to inspect closer later. The floor was carpeted a deep purple, contrasting nicely with the wooden interior. Antique-looking furniture was placed vicariously along the walls. This way. This floor has the common room, the kitchen, game area, and a room we use for alpha meetings. It also has the dining room for meals. Second floor belongs to my Gamma and his family. Third floor is for my Beta and his family. The fourth floor is for us, and the fifth floor is the library. That was the most he'd said to me since we'd met. Wait, us? Us? I squeaked. Lily POV. He stopped on the stairs and looked down at me. As if he wasn't tall enough, this was even more intimidating. Yes, us. You are my wife, and Luna of this pack. Don't worry. You have your own room. Hey? Before I could ask, he trotted up the stairs, me scrambling to keep up. I was feeling lightheaded and gasping for breath by the time we reached our floor. Years of being starved for long periods of time will do that to you, I guess. I shuffled down the hall, nearly running into the back of him when he stopped abruptly in front of a door. This is your room. My room is across the hall. He pointed to a door adjacent to mine. Clothes will arrive tomorrow for you. Without another word, he opened his door and stepped inside, closing it on my shocked face. Numbly, I opened my own door and stepped inside. I don't know why I expected it to be small, old habits I guess. It was huge. The floor was plush, soft grey carpet. A king-size bed was set against the wall, begging for a good night's sleep. Across from the bed was an old-fashioned fireplace, already lit and filling the room with warmth and a soft glow. A neatly stacked pile of wood was placed to its side. White curtains were drawn across glass doors that looked to open to a balcony. I assumed the door to my right was a bathroom, and the double wooden doors led to a closet. Again, not what I had imagined. But then we didn't imagine we'd have our own room, did we? I grumbled. No. But it's better than sleeping with him, right? Maybe. But what was the point of all this if we're not going to be together? I didn't have an answer to that. It did seem pointless. He acted as if a mate and Luna, let alone a wife, was the last thing he wanted. Maybe it's better this way? He is, him after all. I need to bond with my mate too, Lily. What if he doesn't let us? She whimpered. We live here, Aya. Sooner or later, we'll meet his wolf. I guess. It wasn't the same thing, I knew. Aya needed to make her own bond with the alpha's wolf. Play together, hunt together. The thought of her not being able to do those things made her extremely sad. He has a name, you know. She said. It feels weird calling him Dimitri though. What if he doesn't like it? What if no one else calls him that? You're overthinking things. I don't think so. Yawning, I slipped off my shoes and made my way to the bed. A huge grin plastered my face as I lay down. I'd never slept in a real bed before. My sleeping arrangements at Snow Moon consisted of a couple dirty mattresses filled with holes on the floor. Comparatively, this was heaven. Having nothing else to sleep in, I arranged the skirts of my dress under the covers and fell asleep in minutes. I woke up to someone nudging my shoulder. It couldn't have been Evelyn, she would have just yanked me out of bed. As I became more conscious, memories of the previous day came rushing back and I shot up so fast, whoever was sitting next to me yelped in surprise. Sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. A girl stood at the edge of the bed, hands raised as if in surrender. She had medium-length golden blonde hair, a pale flawless complexion, and a body to die for. Her hourglass figure was the stuff of envy. What I noticed most were her eyes though. They were a similar shade to that of my husband's, perhaps a little darker. I blinked at her and noticed she actually did look quite a lot like Dimitri. "Who are you?" I asked. She smiled softly at me, extending her hand. "I'm Thera, Dimitri's sister. He sent me up here to have a look at you. I didn't mean to wake you so suddenly." I took her hand and shook once. "Look at me. I'm a doctor at the Pack Hospital. Dimitri said you looked a little unhealthy. Do you mind if I examine you? Do I have a choice?" She laughed. "No, not really. You are the Luna after all, we need you in tip-top shape." Okay, go ahead. I'm going to need you to change first. Clothes arrived for you this morning. I put some shorts and t-shirt in the bathroom for you." "This morning? What time is it now?" "Just a little after 1. Well, I slept well over 12 hours. I couldn't complain though, I felt more rested than I had in years." I sat up and stretched, swinging my legs over the side of the bed and making my way to the bathroom. Shutting the door, I did my business while looking around. There was a stand-in shower with what looked like 3 different heads for the water, and a separate white clawfoot tub that I was definitely going to take advantage of later. The counter had one long sink with 2 faucets, a gigantic mirror, and was polished to shine. The floor was black tile, also exceptionally shiny, with floral designed bath mats placed in front of the shower and tub. I stripped out of my dress and threw it in the wicker laundry basket near the door. Taking a breath, I looked at my reflection in the mirror and gasped. No wonder Dimitri hadn't wanted to kiss me. Or touch me, or even be around me for that matter. Bright purple and black bruises patched my cheeks where Evelyn had slapped me. My lip was also busted. How had I not noticed that? My hair had fallen out of its twist while I slept, and was now a tangled mess. My gaze traveled lower and I winced. Bruises dotted my skin in varying sizes from my shoulders down my torso, and my legs were no better. I could count my ribs and my collarbone jutted out sickeningly against my pale flesh. I'd always had a large chest, regardless of my weight, but it looked odd and disfigured in contrast to every other part of me. There was absolutely no muscle on me, I was literally skin and bone. I was hideous. A quiet cry left my lips as I grabbed the clothes Thera had set for me and dressed quickly. Wiping my eyes, I opened the door and strode back into the room. Thera was arranging tools on the bed, a stethoscope, a blood pressure cuff. Something that resembled a little hammer. "If you could sit on the edge of the bed, I'll take your vitals," she said. I sat dutifully as she wrapped the cuff around my arm and looked at her watch, counting. Her eyebrows furrowed slightly, and she jotted something in a little black notebook. Next, she listened to my breathing and tested my reflexes. Her expression became more and more concerned as she carried on with her exam. "Luna, can you lie on the bed please?" she asked while writing in her book. I did as she asked and placed my hands on my stomach. "You can call me Lily," I said. She glanced up and smiled. "Lily it is." Setting her notebook aside. "I'm going to have to examine your middle. I need you to remove your shirt. It's not invasive, and it won't take long, I promise." Yeah, okay. Sure." I sat up and removed my shirt, lying back again. Tyara's eyes widened as she stared at me. A small gasp left her lips before she shook it off and went to work. Poking and prodding with her fingers, she asked me if this and that area were tender, if it was sore. She gave me a hard look when I said no, so I relented a little and was honest. As she scribbled furiously in her little book, she asked me to turn onto my stomach. When I did, the sound of pen against paper stopped abruptly. My goddess! I squeezed my eyes shut in shame and embarrassment. I knew what my back looked like. When Alpha Theo was in a particularly violent mood, he would use a silver knife on me. Only ever on my back though, as it was the easiest part of me to cover up. The skin was jagged with scars that would never fully heal. They ranged from below my shoulder blades down to the bottom of my spine all over. What? How did you get these? Asked Thera. She ran her finger over a particularly deep scar. Silver. I mumbled. Silver what? A blade. I nodded mutely. Who did this to you? You couldn't have done this yourself. Who? She demanded. What was I supposed to say? I couldn't implicate Alpha Theo. I doubted Thera would believe me anyways. Who? Thera more harshly. A member of Snow Moon. I said. Which member? I shook my head. She let out an exasperated sigh. I sat up and threw my shirt on quickly. All right. You don't have to tell me. But I'm telling you now that Dimitri is going to want to know. Why? It's not like he cares anyways. Just another thing about me that's repulsive. What on earth makes you think that? She asked wide-eyed. Dimitri POV. How are we for patrols on the eastern border? I was in my office with my beta, Ben, and my gamma, Luke. I needed some sort of distraction this morning. I'd sent Thera to look over Lily, for obvious reasons. The girl was covered head to toe in bruises and cuts. I needed some sort of plan to get her healthy again. A strong Luna made a strong Alpha, and she wasn't strong at all. We have enough for the east, but we could reinforce the south. Rogues have been targeting along there more frequently, said Ben. All right. Get Ned on it ASAP. Ned was my head warrior, and Ben's twin brother. Both had fought for the beta title, but Ben won fair and square. Luke came from a long line of gammas, so he was the obvious choice for the role. Ned was more than happy to take the lead as head warrior and train others into the best group of fighters this side of the country. Will do, boss. Before either of them could say anything else, the door slammed open and Thera marched in, breathing hard with a destructive expression on her face. You and you. Out. She pointed to Ben and Luke, who raised their eyebrows at me. I nodded, so they left looking confused. I turned my chair towards Thera. Well? I asked. Well? Dimitri, that girl is covered in marks. And her back. She gulped. What happened at that pack? Her back? What's wrong with her back? It's mutilated. She wouldn't tell me who did it, only that it was caused by silver. It looks like someone cut her with a blade over and over and over. Thera sat heavily in one of the chairs across from my desk, tossing her little black notebook at me. I started flipping through the pages. Goddess! Lily wasn't just unhealthy, she was malnourished, dehydrated, and severely underweight. Bruises covering most of her body, signs of physical and mental abuse. I closed the book. What's the treatment? I asked straight-faced. Food and water. Lots of it, often. But small meals first. I doubt her stomach can handle a hearty meal. I couldn't understand why her wolf wasn't healing the minor injuries. Like the bruises. But she's so weak, so that means her wolf is too. With good care, and rest, her wolf should start to heal her again. But her back, it'll never heal properly. She shuddered. I nodded slowly. I'll have the cooks prepare something for her, at least 6 times a day for now. She thinks you're repulsed by her. Thera said suddenly. What? Exactly what I said. Dimitri, you're her mate. And her husband. But, more importantly, her mate. The bond between you two will also help her heal. I rolled my eyes. I don't have time to wait hand and foot on her, Thera. She glared at me. Are you even going to complete the mate bond? I shrugged. Of course. When she's not so fragile. Physically? Or mentally? She demanded. Physically, obviously. So, what? If she's not ready to complete the bond, you're going to force her. I sighed. I'm not having this conversation with you again, Thera. You know, oh, I know, Dimitri. I know that you don't give an ST about that girl upstairs. I know that you have this ridiculous notion that you didn't even have a mate. But here's what I know that if you force Lily to complete the bond when she doesn't feel ready, she will never be the strong Luna you want her to be. She has been abused by someone, or multiple someones, probably for a very long time, and I will find who is responsible, Thera. I growled. She took a deep breath. After a brief silence, she turned on her heel and left, slamming the door on her way out. I sighed heavily, but she didn't understand. She never had. She was right about one thing: at 23 years old, I had given up a long time ago thinking I had a mate out there. I'd looked everywhere in this pack, looked at every unmated girl. I went to neighboring packs, and nothing. What are the chances I'd happen to find her at an alpha meeting that I hadn't even wanted to attend? Ben had basically dragged me to Snow Moon, the one pack we didn't really associate with because its alpha was beyond useless. I hadn't been there since I was a kid, with my father when he was alpha. Alpha meetings were supposed to be about renewing allies, gaining new ones, and discussing potential threats. I hadn't even considered that I'd meet a girl with haunting green eyes and a wildflower citrusy scent who would turn out to be my mate. As soon as she'd entered the room, Ajax, my wolf, had gone absolutely wild. It had taken almost all of my self-control to rein him in and keep him from marking her right there in the middle of the hall. The same hall I'd married her in a week later. Admittedly, seeing her walk down the aisle in her long white dress, the way the skirts flowed around her as she moved, she looked beautiful. And awful. Red marks that would surely turn to bruises soon had covered her cheeks, and a thin line of blood was running from her busted lip. Already formed bruises had dotted her bare shoulders, and I assumed from that the volume of her gown was purposefully made to hide the extent of her injuries and the state of her body. Now I know I had been right. But did I care about her? No. That may sound horrible, but mates, Luna's especially, were potentially disasters waiting to happen. They served to make one stronger, that was all. When an alpha lost his Luna, it was well known that he would never be the same. Most killed themselves just to escape the pain. When I had been younger, I'd idolized the idea of finding that one person, my other half, to love and love me back. But over the years, I learned that while a mate made you stronger, they could also be your downfall. This is why I would complete the bond with Lily, but she would never be my mate, the way mates usually worked. There would be no intimacy, no real love. I didn't have time for love. Alpha. I raised my head to see Janine standing in the doorway. Don't you dare! Ajax growled in my head. Occasionally, Janine and I would. There were no feelings between us, she was simply really easy and a good stress relief. And I was pretty stressed right now. Shut up! I told Ajax and beckoned Janine forward. She smiled and closed the door. The dress she was wearing left nothing to the imagination, but for some reason I wasn't aroused. I'm not doing this. We're not. We have a mate now. So? We haven't completed the bond. I don't care. I'm not going to let you hurt our mate by this whore. You're so tense, baby. Janine had moved to stand behind me, moving her hands over my shoulders in what she classified as a massage. Really, it felt like talons digging into my skin. Her touch made me uncomfortable, edgy in a way it never had before. I'm not in the mood for foreplay. I grumbled. She stepped into the side, swiveling my chair to face her. In one quick motion, she had my pants unzipped and pulled down. Her tits were practically hanging out of her dress as she leant forward. I had the urge to look away. That's fine. We can get straight to it. I'm always eager to please my alpha. She purred. Had her voice always been that nasally? Goddess, it was annoying. Sure. I mumbled. Down went my boxers, and embarrassment colored my expression. I wasn't hard at all. I mean, at all. Janine raised her eyebrows, clearly not expecting that. I didn't say a thing. Are you not excited to see me, baby? She asked. No. Ajax growled. I was silent. Maybe this will get things going. Standing up, she reached back and I heard her zipper. The dress fell in a puddle around her feet and she smiled at me. Of course she wasn't wearing anything underneath. I looked back at her dispassionately. I should be rock hard right now, she had a great body. But my wolf's adamant unwillingness to betray our mate wouldn't allow me to appreciate it. It's not just me. You don't want to do this any more than I do. Didn't I? I sat there, not saying a word, and Janine's smile faltered a bit. Little things I hadn't noticed before, right now really bugged me about her. Her eyes were too close together, and a boring dull shade of blue. Her hair was so fake blonde, I was surprised it was still intact from all the bleaching. Her lips were thin and her nose was a little upturned. Her body, yes attractive, but just average too. These little things should be inconsequential, but they weren't. I wasn't shallow per se, but in my head, I saw a pair of bright green eyes and I heard Lily's laugh. Janine was just an easy lay that had run its course. Standing up, I fixed my clothes. What are you sorry? This isn't going to happen. And it's probably best that it doesn't ever again. I said. Her jaw dropped. But... Dimitri Alpha. I am Alpha to you. Now, go. I walked over and opened the door, not even caring that if anyone walked past they would see her naked. She huffed angrily and I rolled my eyes. Grabbing her clothes, she quickly slid into them and walked out. I slammed the door behind her. I hate you. I told Ajax. You would have hated yourself more. If he was right, I didn't acknowledge it. Lily POV. It had been 1 week since I was brought to Blood Moon. A whole week. 7 days, and Dimitri had not come to see me once. Honestly, I was angry. Every morning, I would hear him leave his room. And every night, I heard him return. But not once did he check up on me. I'd been getting 6 steady meals a day, mostly soups and breads. I was slowly beginning to eat more and more, actually feeling full without the accompanying nausea. That first day, Thera had found me in the bathroom clutching my stomach and being violently sick in the bathroom. She had warned me that eating too much too soon would do more harm than good, and to take it slow. Now I could handle some solid meats along with my meals, which I was more than happy about. I'd also been sleeping. A lot. Thera's rules were sleep and rest so I, and Aya, could heal properly, and we were. Lately, the connection between my wolf and I had grown. She was much more apparent in my head, in a way I never knew she could be. The constant aching of my body had disappeared, and the bruises were all but gone. I was still too thin, but I had some color in my cheeks now. I showered daily and felt just better than I ever had. Physically at least. Thera had tried to convince me to see a therapist, but I refused. I didn't want to talk about my past. If I never had to go back to Snow Moon, I was happy. I could move on. Sure, I'd never forget, or forgive, but hashing it out with a stranger didn't seem likely to help. Talking to my mate might, but he was decidedly absent from my life. He was so close, yet couldn't be bothered with me. Each day that passed, I grew angrier. What was the point in bringing me here if he was going to act like I didn't exist? For the millionth time, I thought over my conversation with his sister. 7 days ago, what on earth makes you think that? Thera asked. Oh come on. He married me, wouldn't kiss me at the altar, dragged me back here and dumped me in a room by myself. I huffed. She blinked. He didn't kiss you. He hasn't touched me at all. Pinching the bridge of her nose, she sat down on the edge of the bed. Luna Lily. Lily. Dimitri is, well, he's a hard one. He's one of the youngest alphas in the world. He took over early when our father died. You've heard all the stories about him, I'm sure. The heartless alpha. She scoffed. Believe it or not, there was a time when Dimitri was a happy person. Smiling and laughing. Really? Did this Dimitri kill that one? I asked sarcastically. Thera laughed. Some days it seems like it. I miss the old Dimitri, my happy brother. The one who wasn't cold and stubborn and a killer. I said. Thera gave me a hard look. Yes. He has killed people. A lot of people. But I can advocate that he has never killed anyone who didn't deserve worse than what he gave them. You shouldn't believe everything you hear. Give him a chance, Lily. Present, I sighed. How was I supposed to give him a chance if he never gave me the opportunity? And did I even want to? Maybe not all the stories were true, but even so. He sure hadn't made a good first impression on me, and it wasn't getting any better as the time passed. I wasn't going to beg him for attention, if that's what he wanted. On the other hand, staying in this room was driving me stir-crazy. My whole life, I'd been going, cleaning and cooking and doing work. Now I was holed up in a room in a bed in unfamiliar territory and admittedly, too nervous to leave said room. What is everyone was as unwelcoming as my mate. Thera is nice. Aya reminded me. True. Why don't we go exploring? Outside. Yes. She yipped. Getting out of bed, I walked into my closet. It was bigger than my bathroom. The clothes Dimitri had got for me didn't even cover 1/3 of it. Dressing in a pair of faded blue jeans, a red tee, I grabbed a pair of hiking boots and threw them on before I left. I glanced at the door across from mine, catching a faint hint of Dimitri's scent, allowing myself a second of appreciating it. Only a second, then I was headed off down the hall, down the stairs and out the front door. You didn't have an asthma attack that time? Laughed Aya. Not funny. Wait till we have to go back up. Stop for a rest this time. Sounds like a plan. I wandered aimlessly around the side of the pack house, not wanting to venture too far yet. I wasn't up for meeting a lot of the pack yet, but I hoped a lot of them were like there were a few people outside, a group of teenage boys near the edge of the forest throwing a football around, an elderly lady tending to the gardens, and a man who looked to be running laps. As I passed the gardener, she looked up and smiled brightly. I returned her smile and stopped to admire her work. A particular flower caught my eye. "Excuse me, miss, but what kind of flower is that?" I asked, pointing. "Oh, that one is my favorite. It's called a blue stargazer lily. It's beautiful," I said. "It really is." Standing up, she wiped dirt on her pants before offering me her hand. "Name's Greta. What's your name, dear?" I smiled wider. "Actually, Lily." Greta laughed loudly. "Well, isn't that a coincidence? Are you the official gardener here?" I asked. "Oh, no. I actually work in the kitchens. This is just a hobby of mine. Helps out the folks who garden if I tend to them a little here and there." "That's nice of you." She shrugged. "Helping others is a privilege I find." "I like her," chirped Aya. "Me too," I replied. "I haven't seen you around before, Lily." "Did you just move to Blood Moon?" asked Greta. "Something like that." I'm actually the alpha's mate." Her eyes widened. "Oh. So you're our new Luna. Well, welcome to Blood Moon, and my apologies for not using your title." "It's fine, really, Greta. You can call me Lily." Greta beamed at me. "My dear, no offense, but you are awfully skinny. What have we been feeding you?" "Not enough, clearly." I laughed. "Actually, the food here is fantastic. I was told to take it slow, not too much at a time." Her eyes dawned with understanding. "Ash. Well, I'm on duty tonight for dinner. I'm going to make you something special, don't you worry, it will be plentiful, but not too much." "Wow. Thank you, but you don't have to go do extra work just for me." She waved her hand. "It's no trouble at all." "Oh, I can't wait." I was practically dancing in my head. "My wolf is very excited. I should go now. It was very nice to meet you. Let me know if you ever want help out here, I love flowers." I said. "I will. It was so nice to finally meet you too, dear." I waved and continued walking, a small smile on my face. 5 minutes out the door and I was already feeling a little more positive towards this pack. Making my way to the end of the house, I stopped to admire the lush forest surrounding it. I was going to have so much fun running here when we were able to shift. "That's only 3 days away, you know." "I know," I said. "Are you nervous?" "A little maybe." "Are you?" "Yeah. Our mate should be with us the first time." I frowned. I don't think we should expect him to be there with us. It'll be so much worse if he's not though. We need them." She whimpered. I sighed. "I know. I knew I had to talk to Dimitri about this. Females really got the ST end of the stick. We had heats, pregnancy, labor, birth. As if that wasn't enough, our first shifts were also really hard on us. There were the lucky girls who found their mates before the first shift, and the males would help them through it. Just having physical contact with their mate was enough to ease the pain and make the process go more smoothly. I'd seen girls go through the first shift without a mate, and it wasn't something I had looked forward to. It seemed, however, that would be the case for me whether I had a mate or not. "Hey!" Lily POV. An embarrassingly loud scream left my lips as I spun around, My hand clutched to my chest in fright. The man who was running laps earlier stood in front of me, his hands raised in a gesture of apology. Sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. I was just wondering if you were okay. What? I gasped. Well, you looked kind of sad, maybe. And you were standing here all alone. I thought maybe you were lost or something. He trailed off. I was talking to Aya. I blurted out. His eyebrows creased in confusion as he glanced around me. He probably thought I was crazy. My wolf. I clarified for him. Oh. Yeah. Now he looked embarrassed. He shoved his hands into his pockets and looked around awkwardly. It was pretty adorable, honestly. Up close, he really wasn't as much of a man so much as a boy. Maybe my age or even younger. He certainly had the body of a man, but his face held onto his youth, making him look cute and shy. His hair hung into his eyes, which were a light blue. That's a pretty name. I mean. He said. Thanks. I'm Clint. He offered me his hand. We shook once. His hand was warm and soft. A warrior, he was not. Lily. Haven't seen you around before, Lily. Did you just move here? I shuffled my feet a bit. Yeah. Last week. I replied. Cool. Clint smiled and I hesitantly returned the gesture. So what do you do for fun around here? Usually hang around in the game area, or the common room. When I'm not out training anyways. Is that what you were doing? Not really. I was just running out some stress. Oh. I paused. What are you stressed about? I asked. The warrior exams. They're tomorrow. I'm hoping to pass and begin warrior training, give my dad something to brag about. He ran his hands through his hair as he talked. Your dad doesn't brag about you. Well, sometimes, but mostly he saves the bragging rights for my older brother. Clint rolled his eyes so heavily I was surprised they didn't get stuck. I didn't really know how to reply to that, but I found myself relaxing as we talked. Can I help you get home? He asked suddenly. Hey? Oh, no thanks. I know the way pretty well. I looked pointedly at the pack house. You live here? Wait. His eyes widened. Are you the new Luna that arrived last week? Why was it so hard for me to admit I was the Luna of this pack? Maybe it was just hard to admit I was mated to the alpha of this pack. Yup, that would be me. I clipped out. Clint was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. What? I asked. Nothing. Just, wow. Sorry, I mean. He stopped to take a breath. I just didn't take you for a Luna at first. He mumbled hurriedly. I laughed out loud at his expression. He looked so frightened. It's all right, Clint. No need to look like you're seconds away from being thrown in a dungeon. I giggled. I'm not exactly Luna material, I know. His face softened. Nat, I don't believe that. Yet, looking at you now. He stepped to the right, putting his fingers to his chin as if in deep thought. Yet, from this angle, I can totally tell. You're definitely a Luna. Stop it. I giggled again. It's a pleasure to finally meet Blood Moon's new Luna. Clint made an exaggerated bow. I rolled my eyes. I'm not technically Luna yet. I said. Clint glanced at my neck and away again. Well, may I escort you back inside, Luna Lily? He offered me his arm, earning him another eye roll. I guess so. Taking his arm, we began the walk back to the front of the pack house. Suddenly, I had the feeling I was being watched. Looking behind me, I froze in place. Dimitri was standing under a tree not far away, his arms crossed, and his expression stone cold. How long had he been there? And how had I not noticed him before? Our gazes locked and shiver ran from my head to the soles of my feet. What's wrong? Clint asked. Following my gaze, he spotted Dimitri and he paled. Immediately, he dropped my arm and stepped away from me. Oh! He whispered. I looked between Clint and Dimitri, making a decision. A really stupid decision. Taking Clint's hand, I turned my back on Dimitri, and continued walking, towing Clint behind me. Are you crazy? I like living Lily. Clint breathed. I shrugged. I'm allowed to have friends, aren't I? I asked him. Well yet, but nothing. You haven't done anything wrong. You were nice enough to come talk to me, and offer to show me the way back to the front door. That doesn't mean you're getting a death sentence. It might. He squealed. The look on his face would have been funny, if I didn't believe he was serious. Some mate I had. We rounded the corner, out of Dimitri's sight. Walking up the drive to the door, I said goodbye to Clint and wished him luck on his exams. He was glancing around nervously, as if expecting my mate to come charging out of nowhere and murder him. He took off rather quickly and I let out a sad sigh. Heading into the house, I made my way to the stairs, taking them one slow step at a time. By the time I reached the second floor, I was gasping for breath. Sit down for a minute. Aya chided me. I didn't even have it in me to argue. Slumping to the landing between the flights of stairs, I leaned my head against the banister. I sounded like a chain smoker. So attractive. At least this gave me a few minutes to reflect on my dumbass behavior. Maybe Clint was right, and I was crazy. It wasn't that I thought Dimitri cared for me in any way, he'd been pretty obvious that he didn't. But I had just blatantly disrespected not only my alpha, but my mate and husband. It would be a miracle if I lived through the night after what I just did. Or maybe he would take his anger out on Clint. That thought had me feeling extremely guilty. What had I just done? You look like you're about to throw up. For the second time today, I screamed at an unknown voice. Except this one offered no apologies, just an amused smirk. You want some help? Or maybe a bucket? He asked. He stood on the second last stair, leaning against the railing. Brown wavy hair complemented his chocolate eyes and mocha skin. He had a carefree air about him, but there was something else, an aura of authority that surrounded him. As Dimitri was the alpha, I guessed this was either his beta or gamma. No, thanks. I declined. Suit yourself. Only 42 more stairs to go to reach your floor. Good luck. He patted me on the back as he went to pass. Wait. He paused to look down at me. 42? I asked. He shrugged. Give or take a couple steps. I groaned loudly. I'll take that help if it's still on the table. I heard a snicker, and then I was lifted off the floor and set on my feet. Flourishing his hand dramatically, he gestured for me to go first. We began the horrid climb together, him a step behind me. Dimitri needs to install an elevator. I gasped. You're only the 100th person to make that suggestion. I glanced behind me. Beta or gamma? I asked him. Beta. Benjamin, Ben for short. Don't ever call me Benji though. Okay, nice to meet you Beta. You can call me Ben, Luna. I stopped short, nearly tripping over a step. Ben caught me by the elbow, helping me right myself. You can't honestly be surprised that I know who you are? He asked. No. No, I guess not. You're just the first person to address me as Luna today without me having to tell you who I was. It caught me off guard. He smirked and we continued up in silence. By the time we reached my floor, I was once again winded and cursing every stair in this house. I can make it from here. Thanks Ben. Anytime Luna. Ben saluted me before turning and trotting down the stairs. Literally, the way he moved reminded me of a horse. You can call me Lily. I called after him. Lilith. He shouted back. No. His laughter floated up to me. Shaking my head, I headed down the hallway to my room. Dimitri's scent was faint in the hall. Remembering my conversation with Aya, I debated if I should wait for him or not. We really needed to talk. But then I remembered my stunt with Clint, and I quickly fled into my room instead. Dimitri POV today was an ST day. I'd gotten barely any sleep this last week due to stress. Rogues were attacking the borders almost daily now, becoming more and more violent. My men were taking care of them, but more just kept coming. I needed to figure out where they were coming from, and why there were so many. Janine hadn't left me alone all week. The BH was desperate. It seemed no matter where I was, she was right there too. The kitchens, the training grounds, skulking around the pack house, hanging onto me shamelessly. Staff who worked in the pack house were starting to talk. It was only a matter of time until rumors made their way to Lily. But they aren't exactly rumors. Snickered Ajax. They are. Nothing is going on between Janine and me anymore. The key word there is anymore. I don't think our mate will care about the differentiation. Why would she care anyway? You saw her today with that boy. I thought you didn't care about her? That she was only here to serve one purpose. Why do you care who she talks to? My hand gripped the rail on the stairs so hard my knuckles turned white. Remembering the way Lily had laughed and laughing with that mutt made me angry again. I'd been out on a run, blowing off steam, when I heard her scream. Ajax had immediately changed course, heading to our mate. I'd shifted and run to the pack house, but what I saw made me see red. Lily was talking to another man, a boy rather, laughing and giggling like a schoolgirl. I vaguely recognized him from training. He was supposed to be taking the warrior exams tomorrow. What really got me was the intense rush of feelings I'd experienced. Wishing it had been me that she was laughing for. Me that she blushed for. Me that was holding her hand. Lily must be really naive not to have noticed that that boy was flirting with her. And when he had looked at her neck, her unmarked neck, I'd had to hold myself back from killing him on the spot. So all in all, a really ST end to a really ST week. All I wanted was to go to my room, and sleep. I heard Ben coming down the stairs, laughing to himself. When he saw me he skipped the last 2 steps, coming to a stop. Hey boss! Hey! What are you doing up here? I helped your Luna up to bed. He was up against the wall so fast I wasn't even sure how it happened. My fist was pulled back aimed for his face, my other hand fisted in his shirt. What did you say? I growled. Whoa! Chill Dimitri. It was a joke, I was joking. I let him go, stepping back. He adjusted his shirt, eyeing me like I'd lost my mind. Where is she? I demanded. Upstairs. Truth is, she had trouble getting back upstairs, and I found her on the landing on my floor. I offered to make sure she got up here all right. You really do need to invest in an elevator, man. Why didn't you mind link me? I snapped at him. Ben blinked at me several times. He didn't think you'd care enough to come help Lily. Was he wrong? Ajax asked sarcastically. I ignored him and focused on Ben. Next time, you link me. Got it? Ben nodded, waving as he continued down to his floor. Taking the steps 2 at a time, I caught Lily's scent and inhaled deeply. It calmed my nerves somewhat. Turning the corner, I saw her and my breath whooshed out in relief. She was standing in the middle of the hallway looking between my door and hers. A small part of me wished she would knock on my door. A bigger part of me wished she would turn around so I could see her face. What was wrong with me? The next second though, she sped into her room and slammed the door. I heard the lock click. Great. Now she's locking herself in. Grumbled Ajax. I have a key, dumbass. I shot back. Oh yeah? What's the plan, Dimitri? Unlock the door, storm in and force our mark on her. He scoffed. A small smile crept onto my face. Not quite. Marching to my room, I threw open the door and headed straight for my nightstand. The top drawer had all the keys for this floor. I grabbed the one for Lilith and walked out of the room, not even bothering to shut the door behind me. With no hesitation, I unlocked her door and walked in. Her scent hit me like a brick wall. Closing the door softly behind me, I reapplied the lock and looked around. Light peeked out from under the bathroom door and the sound of water running hit my ears. She was in the shower. Images of her washing herself popped into my head and my sweatpants tented almost instantly. Crossing the room silently, I sat on the edge of the bed waiting. 5 minutes later, the water shut off and I could hear her on the other side of the door. If she walked out naked, I don't think I'd be able to hold myself back. This is a really dumb idea. My wolf whined. The bathroom door opened and, mercifully, Lily was wrapped in a towel. Her hair was still wet and hung around her shoulders and down her back. She looked so much better than she did when she got here. The bruises were gone and she even looked like she'd gained a little weight. Her scent wafted in from the bathroom, carried by the lingering steam of the shower. Goddess, she smelled amazing. It took all of 5 seconds for Lily to notice me. Those eyes of hers widened considerably and she let out a small gasp. What are you doing in here? She demanded. I decided to play dumb. I live here. She looked to the door and I watched as her throat moved in an audible gulp. Plotting escape? Not likely. What are you doing in here? I got to my feet, watching her every move. This is my house. Okay. So. I stepped forward. She stepped back. So, since this is my house, I have the right to come and go from any room as I please. Another step forward. Another step back. You couldn't have waited until I was clothed. Step. Step. Wolves don't usually have any qualms about being naked in front of each other. Well, I do. One more step and Lilith's back hit the wall. I closed the distance between us, placing my hands on either side of her head, trapping her. She really was a tiny little thing. I dwarfed her, having to lean down so our faces were inches apart. Around everyone? Or just me? I asked. I could hear her heart pick up speed. Her breathing was heavier, but her eyebrows creased in confusion. What do you mean? I mean, would you have a problem being naked in front of that boy you were talking to earlier? Or do you just have a problem being naked in front of me? Your mate. Her reaction wasn't what I anticipated. She straightened her back and fixed me with a steely glare. I have a problem being naked in front of anyone. Especially, she stepped forward, shocking me into taking a step back. People who bring me into their home, and then act as if I don't exist. Especially around people who dump me in a room by myself and don't bother to check up on me. And especially around people who buy me but are too repulsed by me to even touch me even though I'm their mate. I opened my mouth, but she held up her hand. I'm not done. She snapped. You can't come up here after a week and BH me out for talking to someone, boy or girl, when you haven't bothered to say one word to me since the day I got here. If you must know, Clint isn't the only one I talked to today. I also met one of the cooks, Greta. Now, if you had seen me talking to her, would you be in here right now? No. Where did this little spitfire come from? Furthermore, Alpha, if you were expecting something from me by barging in here while I'm undressed, well, you can just forget it. The man who didn't even want to kiss me at my own wedding, you're still on that. I interrupted her. Her eyes narrowed. You're the one who came in here throwing the word mate around. If you really can't understand why that hurt me, then you're a bigger AE than I thought. Lily POV. The shock I got from seeing Dimitri in my room was nothing compared to the shock of me telling him off. Never in a million years would I have dreamed that I'd be standing in a bedroom alone, in nothing but a towel, giving a big verbal middle finger to the most dangerous alpha. The idea would have been laughable, but here I was, running my big mouth. Maybe you could chalk it up to a week's worth of stress, but I think I preferred a lifetime's. It was as if something in me had snapped and all the years of being treated like ST had finally bubbled up and boiled over at the worst possible time. This was not the bear to poke. Aya had been yelling at me this entire time, telling me shut up. You're the one who came in here throwing the word mate around. If you really can't understand why that hurt me, then you're a bigger AE than I thought. His eyes went flat as he froze at my words. What did you say? He growled. Now you've done it, said Aya. You think I'm AE? Dimitri asked. You have no idea, Lily. I have a good idea actually. Based on what? Rumors? Let me tell you the truth, those stories you've heard aren't anything compared to what really happened. No, what really happened was much worse. Tell me, have you heard the one where I killed the Alpha and Luna before burning the pack to the ground? My stomach churned. I had heard that story. Answer me. Dimitri shouted. Why yes. I heard that. I whispered. Do you want to know why I did it? He continued before I could answer. That Alpha had beaten his Luna to the point that she couldn't bear children. She had rejected him years before, and he accepted it. Instead of letting her go, he kept her in a room chained with silver, raping her and abusing her. His pack had abandoned him, the whole place was filled with rogues. Rogues who were killing and raping women and children. I killed the Alpha and burnt the pack to the ground, killing all those disgusting creatures with it. As for her, the Luna, she wasn't even here anymore, not really. I brought here, where she could get better. But she didn't. She wouldn't eat, wouldn't talk, she didn't even sleep. She would never be the same again, and she wasn't even really living. So I ended her life hoping she might find some semblance of peace. I was stunned into silence. What was I supposed to say to all that? Obviously, he'd had good reasons for what he did. Even killing that Luna, I couldn't blame him. If it were me, I would have done the same thing. Dimitri was looking at me, and for the first time, I saw a hint of emotion in his eyes. regret. I'm sorry. I said. I don't need your apologies, Lily. All right then. Awkward silence fell between us. I was the one to break it. The full moon is soon, I said. Dimitri raised one eyebrow. I'm aware. It'll be my first shift. So? Was he serious? So, will you be there with me? Yes. His quick agreement was another shock. Okay. I became very aware that I was still in nothing but a towel. Heat crept up my neck and into my cheeks. Can I get dressed now? Alone. He rolled his eyes but turned for the door. Exhaling a breath of air, I turned for my closet. Lily. My hand paused on the door. Yes. I answered without looking back. Make sure your friends know not to cross a line. I might not have so much self-control next time. With that he opened the door and was gone. I stared at the spot he had vacated for a moment, silently asking the moon goddess what she had gotten me into. The next morning, I decided I would have breakfast downstairs for the first time. Getting up and down those treacherous steps was only going to get easier the more I did it. So once I was dressed, I made my way down and followed my nose and the smell of food through the house. Dimitri must have an eye for art. Expensive-looking paintings lined the walls all the way to the dining room. I stopped to admire a few on my way, they were beautiful. Hey, can I help you get somewhere? For once, I didn't scream. It seemed people just liked to sneak up on others around here. I turned to see a young girl standing beside me. She had a hesitant smile on her face, and kind hazel eyes. Freckles dotted across her cheeks and nose, and her long chestnut hair fell down in waves. I returned her smile. I'm just on my way to breakfast, I said. Oh, me too. I can walk you there if you want. Sure. She fell into step beside me. I'm Lily, by the way. Nice to meet you, Lily. I'm Hazel. Oh, like your eyes. She giggled. Exactly, actually. I'm the only one in my whole family who doesn't have blue eyes. Apparently that so was special, my parents had to name me after them. It's a really pretty name, I said. Thanks. I like your name too. Hazel pushed open a swinging double door at the end of the hall, and my jaw dropped. The dining room was huge. Long picnic-like tables were set in 5 rows that stretched back to the end of the room. To the right, a huge buffet-style breakfast was set up with enough food to feed a small pack. My mouth instantly started watering at the sight of eggs, bacon, hash browns, pancakes, French toast, fruit salads, sausages, and everything in between that could be considered breakfast. Grabbing Hazel's arm, I dragged her over to the food and started filling a plate. Are you really going to eat all of that? Hazel asked as she eyed my growing plate of food. I'm certainly going to try. I grabbed an orange juice and Hazel led me to the far end of one of the tables. I picked up my fork and dove into the pancakes, moaning loudly at the taste. You'd think you'd never eaten before, laughed Hazel. I've never eaten anything this good, that's for sure, I replied. She smiled, and we ate in silence for a while. I felt like I should try to carry a conversation with her, but that would have been difficult considering my mouth was full of food. Hey Lily? Hazel asked after a while. Yeah. Why is everyone staring at you? I swallowed a piece of bacon and looked around. I'd been totally focused on my food, that I honestly hadn't noticed the amount of people in here. And sure enough, almost everyone was staring at me, looking away quickly when they caught my eye. Whispers floated around the room that I hadn't been listening to before. I guess probably because I'm the new Luna. I told Hazel. Oh. Well, that would do it. I raised my eyebrows. That was less climactic than others' reactions when they found out who I was. Hazel looked up through her lashes at me. I kind of figured that out, to be honest. You're living in the pack house, and I've never seen you before. Also, word got around that we finally had a Luna. I just didn't know your name. So, everyone knows. She shrugged. Mostly everyone, yet. News like that is hard to keep quiet. Looking around at the sea of faces again, I saw a lot of people were looking at me skeptically. For the first time, I felt self-conscious about who I was meant to be. Would I even make a good Luna for this pack? Could I be everything they needed me to be? This was Blood Moon. And I had been a slave my whole life. Would I be able to step up and into the role of Luna of such a pack? I felt a hand cover mine across the table. Meeting Hazel's eyes, she said, "Hey, stop worrying. I can tell you're going to be a great Luna." "How do you know?" I whispered. "I just do." "You came from Snow Moon, didn't you?" I blinked at her. "Yeah." "How did you know that?" "Like I said, news travels fast around here." "Wonderful. How fast would the word travel that I had been a slave?" "Well, if it isn't little whore Hazel." Hazel shrank in her seat slightly, bowing her head. 3 girls were walking between the tables towards us. 2 of them looked to be twins, one with bright red dyed hair, and the other had shorter blonde hair with red streaks. The girl in front was platinum blonde, that was obviously fake if her eyebrows were any indication. She was tall, but that could have been because the 4-inch stilettos she was wearing. Her boobs were practically spilling out of her top, a white midriff paired with the shortest skirt I'd ever seen. The girls behind her were dressed similarly. They stopped behind Hazel and Blondie glanced at me. "Making new friends, Hazel? Or just trying to climb the social ladder again?" She sneered. Her voice was really annoying. Hazel lowered her eyes but didn't say anything. "Hello." Blondie bent over and waved her hand in front of Hazel's face. "Are you deaf as well as dumb? I asked you a question, whore." Hazel looked close to Tears, and I'd heard just about enough. This girl was reminding me more and more of Evelyn. She obviously doesn't want to talk to you. I snapped. All 3 girls looked at me. Blondie straightened up, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "I don't believe I asked your opinion." "Luna." Lily POV. The way this girl used my title had my back up. I snarled in my head, angry at being disrespected. I didn't think I would have this type of reaction. After all, I wasn't technically Luna yet, Dimitri hadn't marked me, and I hadn't been officially made a member of Blood Moon. Even though Dimitri had accepted me at our wedding, we had to exchange blood and oaths, which would be done at my Luna ceremony. Then I would officially be a member, able to mind link within the pack. "Who is this to talk to us like that?" growled Aya. I fixed Blondie with a glare of my own. "Well, that's too bad because you got it." I snapped at her. Her blue eyes turned black before fading to blue again. "Do you know who I am?" she sneered. "Do I care?" "You should." A smug smile appeared on her face. "I'm Dimitri's girlfriend." My heart stopped along with my breath. He had a girlfriend? Is that why he wanted nothing to do with me? I whimpered in pain at the thought of our mate being intimate with another. However, I wasn't going to let her know her words had upset me. "Really?" I asked. "That's funny." "Funny?" She looked confused. Yes, funny. You say you're Dimitri's girlfriend, but I'm his wife. As well as his mate. Leaning back in my seat, I crossed my arms. It's funny that you would call Hazel a whore when you claim to be sleeping with a man who is taken. I think that makes you the whore, not to mention a hypocrite. Boohoos arose from the crowd. I hadn't realized until now that most of the crowd were listening into our interaction. Hazel laughed, trying to cover it with a cough. Blondie glared at the people around us before turning back to me. I never said we were sleeping together. So then you're saying that you're his girlfriend, but he won't touch you? That's just sad. This time Hazel laughed out loud, along with most of the breakfast crowd. No, what's sad is having you for our Luna. Look at you. You're a toothpick. And how disgraceful to Blood Moon and our Alpha that we are stuck with a slave to lead us. Pathetic. She spit. Literally, saliva spewed from her mouth. Gross. More pathetic than a grown-ass woman bullying pack members and disrespecting the ranked members. I shot back. Everyone looked to her, waiting for a response. Her mouth opened. Closed. That's what I thought. I stood up, gesturing for Hazel to do the same. Together we walked away, leaving Blondie standing behind us. People nodded their heads as a sign of respect to me as we passed them. I nodded back. I saw Clint walking towards us, grinning. That was awesome. He enthused as he fell into step with Hazel and me. Thanks. His scent hit me before I saw him. I locked eyes with Dimitri as we reached the door. His expression was a mix of surprise and amusement. Clint and Hazel bowed their heads in respect to him, but I just glared. Without saying a word, I walked around him, pushing open the doors and leaving. Clint and Hazel followed me. Who was that anyways? I asked them. Janine Parker. She's the diva around here. Also the pack bicycle. I gave him a question mark look. Bicycle. You know, because everyone's had a ride. He said. Hazel laughed. I didn't. Does that include Dimitri? That's what I've heard. But that doesn't mean she means anything to him. She seems to think otherwise. Janine thinks very highly of herself. She had this idea that our Alpha would make her Luna because he didn't have a mate. Hazel rolled her eyes. Clint shuddered. Goddess, Blood Moon would crash and burn with her as Luna. She's just jealous that Alpha Dimitri finally found you, and she could never hope to live up to the Luna you're going to be. Hazel smiled. And if what happened back there is any indication of the type of Luna you're going to be, I can safely say we're in good hands. You're going to be a badass Luna. Clint added. Don't let her get to you. She's nothing but a bully. Hazel said. I sighed. Thanks guys. I smiled at them and they beamed back. Clint looked at his watch. OST. I have to go. The warrior exams start in 15 minutes. He waved at us and ran down the hall. Good luck. We called after him. Did you have any plans today? Hazel asked me. Not really. I'm supposed to be taking it easy, but I feel great today. Want to hang out? We could have a movie marathon or something. Excitement bubbled inside me. Sure. Do you like Disney movies? Maybe. I've never really watched any. Any? She looked shocked. Well, I didn't have much time to watch TV. Or movies at my old pack. A white lie, kind of. It wasn't that I hadn't had time, I simply wasn't allowed. A few times I'd been caught trying when I was a kid and I'd been punished for it. Hazel grabbed my hand and started pulling me with her. Well, that changes today. Get ready, because you are in for a long experience. I groaned inwardly when we reached the stairs, but thankfully she let me rest for a few minutes in between flights. When we got to my room, I remembered. I don't have a TV. In here. Hazel walked to the fireplace. A little switch I hadn't noticed before was on the side of the mantel. When she flicked it up, the wall above the fireplace rotated out and turned, revealing a flat-screen TV. I wish I'd known that earlier. I've been bored out of my mind up here, I said. She laughed. The remote should be in the nightstand. When everything was set up, we settled in at the end of my bed to begin our marathon. I had questions burning on the end of my tongue, but I didn't want to voice them. Hazel seemed really nice, and I wasn't used to having anyone I could call a friend. I really wanted to be able to call her that. A few hours and 2 movies later, which I thoroughly enjoyed and would be watching again, a knock sounded on my door. "Lunch," said A's voice as my door opened. "Greta." "Hello dear. How are you?" "I'm great, thanks. What's on the menu today?" "One of my specialties. Potato leek soup, homemade rolls, and a healthy portion of beef stew." "Hotch yum." I practically drooled. "I brought enough for you and your friend." She smiled at us. "Thank you so much," said Hazel. "Eat up girls, while it's still hot." Greta placed the trays on the bed, waving as she left. We dug in and my goddess, this was even better than breakfast. I stirred my soup around, biting my lip. "Hazel." She looked up at me. "Yeah." I was just wondering. I mean, I'm not trying to be rude, or offend you or anything. You're wondering why Janine likes to pick on me." She interrupted. "Kind of, yeah." Setting her bowl aside, she sighed. "Never mind. You don't have to tell me." "No, it's okay. You'll eventually hear the story, and I'd rather you hear it from me." "Okay." She looked down, playing with her fingers. "My dad works in the PAC hospital. Sometimes I help out there. I'm hoping to get a job there too when I'm older." "How old are you?" She looked to be around my age. 17. 18 in a couple weeks. Anyways, last year we had a really bad attack on the northern border. Rogues. A lot of people were injured, and I was helping my dad in the emergency ward, mostly just cleaning wounds and taking vitals. There was this guy, James. He talked to me the entire time I was cleaning him up, flirting with me. Afterwards, he stayed in touch, coming to the hospital when I was there to bring me flowers and stuff. We started dating. She took a breath, letting it out slowly. I thought he was my mate. I didn't know, obviously, I don't have my wolf yet. But I really hoped he was. He was sweet and funny and kind. I wanted to wait and see if we were mates before, you know. Yeah. He told me he loved me. That if we slept together, it would only make him love me more. Still, I hesitated, and he grew distant. He started flirting with other girls in front of me. I confronted him, but he said he needed a woman, not a girl. He was so sure we were mates, but if I was going to hold off, he had to take care of his urges somehow. I rolled my eyes heavily. What a move. I finally gave in. He actually brought me to this very room. Told me that I was his princess and deserved the very best. That my first time should be special. It wasn't. she whispered. Taking another deep breath, she continued. It didn't last very long. Maybe a couple minutes. And it hurt. A lot. I asked James to be gentle, but he wasn't. When he was done, he congratulated me on becoming a woman. And then he left. There were tears in Hazel's eyes which she desperately tried to blink away. My anger was boiling at him who used her like that. The next day. Hazel, no, I'm okay. The next day, I went to the training yard to see him. He literally laughed in my face and told me there was no way we could be mates. Rumors started going around about me, that I gave myself to him without a second thought, that I flung myself at any and every guy in the pack too. James never disputed any of it, he even helped spread some of the stories to his friends. My friends stopped talking to me. It was only after everything that I found out exactly who James was, the pack's lead warrior. The rest of the audiobooks will be uploaded in the next episode. Join us on Patreon to listen to more unlimited audiobooks.